Welcome to the Dr. Diane Show, where we explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. With over 20 years of expertise as a mindset warrior, perspective shifter, and unshakable optimist, I am dedicated to helping you reach your wildest dreams in business, health, performance, and relationships. Learn about the power of thought and how it shapes your life to take risks, change careers, find love, go on adventures, and live passionately with me, Dr. Diane. Get ready for revolutionary ways of thinking, being, and creating an amazing life. The Dr. Diane Show starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Diane Hayden, and you are listening to the Dr. Diane Show on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, where we will explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul. Each time on the Dr. Diane Show, we have experts from around the country discussing cutting-edge topics on longevity medicine, natural health, mindset, spirituality, and soul purpose to help you shift your perspective and become a mindset warrior like me. My guest today is Charleen Miele. She is currently a licensed professional counselor with a private practice and owner of the Sacred Self LLC in Newington, Connecticut. She came to this profession after 25 years of teaching everything from preschool to college courses, becoming a music director and pastoral assistant, and a group fitness instructor. Charleen describes her career journey as just that, a journey as each of the jobs she has found her. She did not find them. She has a strong faith in the divine and believes that she has been led and guided in every aspect of her life. Charleen is a level 2 trained internal family systems therapist and has also assisted in several IFS trainings. She describes IFS as the lens through which she sees everyone navigating this human life. Most recently, Charleen became certified as a trauma-informed breathwork facilitator and is loving guiding people through the healing journey through the somatic practice of active breathing. She's excited to introduce as many people as possible to reconnecting to their bodies through the breath. So welcome, Charleen. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So I'm fascinated by breath work and been getting into a lot of that myself lately with the meditation that I've been doing. We're going to get to that in a minute, but I usually like to start by just learning a little bit more about you and your journey. And basically, how did you get to where you are? I think, one of the things we've talked about is just your career and the path that you took, and how your working with high school students really prompted you to return to school and become a licensed therapist. So I guess let's start there.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yes, I was working a bunch of part-time jobs when my kids were little, and still considered myself a stay-at-home mom because I tried to be there whenever they were home, like when they first started preschool. And but I was teaching fitness classes, and then I was asked to take the job at the church as the music director. And so that was weekends. And so I started to do that. And then I heard a conversation that a friend of mine was having. She happened to be the vice principal at the high school where I ended up teaching. And it wasn't even a conversation I was in, but she was talking to a friend of mine. We were all in the car traveling somewhere. And she said, "Oh, it's so hard to find theology teachers." And when I heard it, it just struck me. And so later I said, "Hey, I have a degree in theology." And she goes, "Yeah, and you already have a couple part-time jobs." And, at this point, my kids were in elementary school and middle school. And then I said, "Yeah, but I'm kind of intrigued." And so we kind of left it there, and I couldn't let it go. So I actually called the principal of the school and just said, "I'd like to come in and interview." And the secretary said, actually, I was talking to the secretary, and she said, "Did the principal ask for you?" And I'm like, "No, she doesn't even know me yet." But that wasn't me. That was very out of my comfort zone, but I couldn't ignore it. It was just one of those things. And I went in, I met with her, and she said, "Could you teach PE? Could you teach health class? Could you teach theology? Could you teach chorus? Because I have a degree in music." And I was like, sure. So when I left, she said, "Okay, you're hired, but I don't know what for yet." And I was like, "Okay." I said, "Well, just let me know before school starts." And it ended up, my first year I taught chorus and theology. And then They hired another chorus teacher because it was easier to find music teachers than it was to find theology teachers. And that began my 10-year journey of teaching high school girls. I loved every single minute of it. Those girls have such a special place in my heart. And if any of them ever happen to hear this, I just want to keep sending the love to them. It was one of the best experiences of my life. And I only left because they kept coming and asking me questions, life questions. And I'm a person that discloses a lot when I teach. I let them know of my own struggles, family struggles and stuff. And they would come to me after class and, oh my gosh, this is going on in my family. And I was like, come on in. And we would just chat. And so I very naively asked the principal if I could start support groups after school. And she said, no. And I was like, why? This is what we talk about during class, because our theology classes were more of how God works in our life. It wasn't, it wasn't just learning about God. And she said, no, you'd have to be a counselor, like liability wise, you'd have to be a counselor. And again, like boop, there it went in my mind. I went home that day and I said to my husband, I think I'm going back to school. He was like, okay, and I did. I signed up and I was in my 40s and I went back to grad school and got my degree. And the sad part of the story is that when all was said and done and I went back, I had taken a year's leave of absence to finish the degree. And I went back and hoped that I could go back to teaching, but do those support groups and stuff. And they believed it would be a conflict of interest. I needed to be in one department, not the counseling department and the theology department. And so I said, then I'm going to have to leave. And she didn't think I was going to do that. But I said, I just went to school, for like years now. And I can't just give that up. So I left teaching and hoped that I could do for people what I had done for those girls in class and wanted to do more of. And so, yeah, I graduated school in 2012 and opened my practice a month later in 2013.
Yeah. I mean, and that's how things happen sometimes, right? Like you think you're going down one path and it turns into something completely different. I mean, that's actually how I started my magazines. I was going to get certification as a life coach, and I was going to basically be doing business counseling for holistic practitioners, and ended up one weekend, down visiting friends who'd started a magazine. And the next thing I know, I'm walking out of there with a business plan for a magazine. Like, wait a minute, what? That's not what I was planning on.
Yeah.
But that's how
sometimes, right. Sometimes there's something bigger than us that knows, where we're supposed to go, or at least gives us the opportunity. That's how I felt. It was like a door was being opened, and it was my choice whether I went through it or not. But I did. And never looked back.
Yeah. So I think theology is so interesting to me, just in terms of, you teaching it and getting involved in that. And obviously, your faith, by reading your bio, your faith has deeply influenced your journey. Mm-hmm. And how does it currently affect the work that you do?
Well, when I was teaching, obviously I was teaching at a Catholic school. I was born and raised Catholic. I was music director at a Catholic church, at least three different Catholic churches, but one for 25 years. I worked for a certain number of years, took a few years off, and then went back to the same parish. And so my roots are Catholic without a question. But I was finding that more and more I believed in that God, but the institution was not something that I could embrace. And even while I was teaching, my department head, she was wonderful and she understood me. We were often on the same page, and she would tolerate when I pushed the boundaries. She would just come in and say, okay, I did this lesson once on feminine images of God, and I had the girls make these mobiles with all the different feminine names for God that you could find in scripture. And she walked in the classroom and looked up and saw them hanging from the ceiling. And she said, really? Like, you have to
Come on,
hang it from
Charleen.
the ceiling?
Yeah.
And I was like, aren't they beautiful? But anyway, so I knew when I left and when I was still working at the church at that point, but I kept coming up against these obstacles or walls that were institution. It wasn't, it really had nothing to do with my relationship with God. That has never changed. I mean, if anything, it's just gotten deeper. And it was the community that fed me, as a musician. That is one of the primary things in my life and in my relationship with God, for sure. And making music and hearing people's voices come together, conducting a choir and just hearing people raise their voices in song, that to me was just the ultimate experience. So I'm still there now. I mean, I'm still in that place, but I don't have my community anymore because I'm not at the church. So, but that's still a huge part of my faith.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm a recovering Catholic too. I
Yeah,
mean, basically,
yeah,
was raised that way. And now I would say, it's more about spirituality for me than
yeah,
any particular religion. But I think it's interesting when you come from that background and kind of what what you go through and learn, I guess. And then if you just get exposed to a lot of other things like you do in your life, and you basically, come to the realization that, I mean, to me, it's like, well, there's all these different religions, but everybody's kind of saying the same thing, right?
mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so, and isn't it really all about us all being connected? And
Absolutely.
yeah, and does it really matter if you're Catholic or you're, Jewish or Muslim or whatever, and believe me, some people would say, yeah, it matters. But I mean, for where I am in my life now, and a lot of people that I meet, it's more about, I think, realizing it's about a bigger thing.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
it's more about, like, we actually are all saying the same thing, and we all, kind of are realizing that we're all connected. And
Right.
I think it's really fascinating when you talk to somebody like you who has the background that you have, and then you actually got into teaching it and how you've weaved it in and into, your classes and even the work that you do now.
Right. Right. And I don't have to call it God even. In IFS we call it self energy. And that self energy within us is transformative. It can take anything we bring in, any trauma, any negative anything, and transform it. And so part of that healing process for me, is that connection with that self energy and healing ourselves. And that's what I love to do with my clients as well.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I like that self energy. That is, I don't know if I've heard that term before, but it makes perfect sense.
Mm.
Yeah.
Self with a capital S.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So we're going to talk more about, how I'm fascinated by internal family systems. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into the breath work and all of that, and how you have weaved this into what you do. But we're going to take a short break. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. When we come back, we'll explore more about Charleen Miele, licensed professional counselor and certified trauma-informed breathwork facilitator. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. But before we continue, I want to make sure everyone knows how to contact me. You can find me at www.drdianehayden.com or at either of my two publications, www.naturalnutmeg.com and www.essentialnaples.com. And you can learn more about Charleen at www.thesacredselfllc.com. That's TheSacredSelfLLC.com. So welcome back, Charleen. We were talking about just your journey and how you have weaved, these beautiful things into what you do, with your teaching and your clients. And I want to now get into internal family systems. And can you just explain what that is, like a little bit of background? Because I think there's a lot of people who may have never even heard of that type of therapy before.
Sure. So if you think about family systems therapy, if I was meeting with a family, I would be looking at all the members of the family. I would be looking at what are the roles in a family, who's the instigator, who's the peacemaker, where are the alliances, things like that. And that's what I'd be watching for as I talk to a family. Well, Dick Schwartz, the founder who developed IFS, Internal Family Systems, took that external image of a family and brought it internally to the individual. So it's internal family systems. So basically, we're looking at the individual who has an ego structure inside of themselves, which we all do. We have to have an ego structure to navigate human life. It's, we have to have emotions, we have to have protectors, we have to know when to make a judgment as far as safety and all of that. So, and in IFS, we call it parts work. And parts language is something we all use, a part of me wants to go out tonight and a part of me just wants to crash on the couch. It's not unusual for us. But what we're looking for are parts that have fallen into an extreme role in the person's system, so that it's no longer a choice to do something. It's like the part takes over and makes that decision. If anybody has seen the movie Inside Out, I have some of the characters over there on my table that I will often use when I'm working with clients, that it was similar. It's not exactly the same, but the idea of all the emotions that were in Riley's head, that's what we're talking about with parts. So we help the person to first discover, okay, what are these parts? What are they doing for you? And there's various ways of doing it, but ideally we try to get the person to be able to access that self energy I was talking about, which hard to describe, but it's kind of like the internal energy of who we are. When people are comfortable with the language, I'll say divine energy, but it can just be universal energy. It can be an energy of love. It's kind of like who we are before life gets a hold of us. We come into the world and what do we call babies? A bundle of joy. It's like life hasn't really happened yet.
So kind of like our soul level, who we are.
It is, but I hesitate to use soul because people have their own ideas of what that means. Mm-hmm. And again, go back to our Catholic roots. We all have a soul with a big old indelible mark of original sin on it. So I don't want to go there. That's not what I mean. So it's more just the energy, the spirit. Spirit might be better, the spirit within. And when they can access enough of that energy, then I facilitate through, it's a guided meditation process where they meet with these parts within their system and they get to know this part. When did you join my system? Why are you here? What are you doing for me? And how can we help this part so that it doesn't have to work so hard for us? And often one of the things we discover is the part is protecting a younger part of us that experienced a trauma at some point. And in IFS, we acknowledge all trauma, little t, all the way to big T. We don't qualify it. We don't, that's not trauma. No, it's all trauma because trauma is subjective. Relative. Yeah. It's all relative. Exactly. And I always use the example, a second grader walks out of the bathroom and there's toilet paper stuck to her shoe and kids giggle at her. That's trauma. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's not, the kind of trauma of someone who experienced abuse, but it's trauma in that moment. She's feeling that embarrassment and everything. It's trauma.
Right.
And so we can have younger parts that kind of get stuck in time. And so we work with those parts, again, facilitating the person, the client that I'm working with gets to be present to these younger parts in the way that the adults in their life couldn't be present to them for whatever reason. It's not about shaming anyone. Half the time, the adults in our life don't even know that we're struggling with something. We don't tell the teacher. We don't tell mom and dad. We feel like it's insignificant. We don't know that anybody's going to listen to us. So it gives people the chance now to heal and help that little one. Many people would call it inner child work. You know, we just have different terms for it, but it is about meeting with those inner parts of us and and facilitate a beautiful, beautiful healing for them.
It's all really fascinating to me because I feel like, wow, there's so much to the human psyche that most of us don't even think about. And to now start to understand and have these kinds of conversations and talk about, okay, there's a part of you that's protecting you from something, but maybe you don't, like you mentioned earlier, it's overprotection, or it's protecting you from something you don't need to be protected. And that's what I would say. That's when someone is dealing with a phobia or anxiety or, some situation where the mind is saying something to them that's not real, it's not helpful, and it's not really protecting them. Now it's keeping them in a box, let's say.
Absolutely. Yep. And a lot of times people aren't consciously aware of why that's happening. They really will be like, I don't know why I can't do this, or I don't know why I'm afraid, or something like that. And I can't tell you how many times people just have this like, oh my gosh moment when they, in the process, they'll remember something that happened. Not like, I don't mean like a suppressed memory that's, huge trauma. It's not that. Sometimes it's even just a conversation, or, oh, I remember my mom used to say this, or my dad used to say this, or in our house, it was an unwritten rule. You didn't need to say anything. You just knew. And it's like, yeah, so there's parts of you that are still living by that. And then people will be like, yeah, but I'm 40 years old now. And it's like, I don't, yes, you are. But that young one is still driving your bus. They're still getting triggered. And triggered is another word. It kind of gets overused today, but it's just poking a vulnerability that we already have. It's a great opportunity. I tell people all the time, triggers are awesome. They don't want to hear that, but it's like, no, it's an opportunity. Then there's something there.
Yep. Then what you can work on. And
right.
I think the thing is, if you can, when you are triggered by something, if you can pause to ask yourself the question, why? Why is this triggering me? And just, to even be that, to gradually get to that awareness, right? That's when I think we can actually start to work on those things.
Right. And sometimes they don't have access to the why without going deeper. And that's where the work in therapy helps, because then I can guide them. It's, again, their eyes are closed. It's not hypnotic. I'm not a hypnosis person, but it's a guided meditation where they go inside and they're in their own world. When I love guiding those meditations, because they truly do feel like they're in a different world. And for many, the time goes by so quickly. And when I start to bring them back to the time and space of the room that they're in, they can't believe an hour has gone by. But it's fascinating.
Yeah. And I think that if you can get deep into meditation, that's happened to me too. Literally, there's been times where I'm doing an hour meditation and all of a sudden it's over. And I'm like, wait a minute, that was 10 minutes.
Yeah. That's what it feels like. Yeah.
Yeah. So you also do breath work with your clients as well. And let's just I just want to know, before we have a couple minutes before we go to break, but tell me what initially attracted you to breath work?
Yeah, that was another one of those things where I used to be a dancer as well, just, for fun. And so I've always had a connection with the body. And then, when I was teaching group fitness and personal training, it was like the body has always been very important to me. And breath work was in some ways, the missing piece for me, even in IFS, and I'll explain more about that a little later, but it's reconnecting people with their bodies, because we are a culture that does everything to disconnect from our bodies. We medicate instead of meditate. We just want to, like, you have a pain, take something, get rid of the pain. It's amazing when I ask people, what do you feel in your body? And they say to me, like, what do you mean? Like, I don't know what that means. We're so disconnected from our body. So for me, breathwork was the missing piece where I could do some somatic work with people, and bring them back into their bodies.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even as aware as I am or as much as I try to be most of the time, there's times where I'm under stress or whatever, and I'm realizing, oh my God, I forgot to breathe. Or I'm realizing like my breaths are not deep breaths, are kind of like, more shallow and things like that. So it's definitely something to be aware of. And I think I love the fact that you have such an emphasis on it, because we do need to be reconnected. We do need to reconnect to our bodies. And I love that. So we're definitely going to get into more of that when we get back. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. When we come back, we'll be talking more about internal family systems and breath work with Charleen Miele. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden, and I am talking today with Charleen Miele. She's a licensed professional counselor and certified trauma-informed breathwork facilitator. You can learn more about Charleen at www.thesacredselfllc.com. That's THESACREDSELFLLC.com. So when we left off, we were talking about just the importance of, reconnecting to our bodies as part of our healing, and how breathwork supports that. So I wanted to jump back into that, Charleen, and just, talk a little bit more. I guess let's talk about how you actually do that with a client. What is the experience like?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to say one thing when we were finishing up the last segment, when you said how sometimes even you who are very mindful, it's like we almost forget to breathe. We have become a culture of shallow breathers, and there's actually something now that is called email apnea, which they're finding when people are sitting. Yeah,
email
apnea.
Oh my God, that's classic.
When people are sitting at their computers or on their phone, checking emails or scrolling, they often stop breathing.
Wow.
They just stop. They're so wrapped up in it that they stop breathing. And if they are breathing, they're breathing very shallow breathing, because they're bent usually. So they're constricting their diaphragm. And yeah, so it's a problem in our culture for sure. And we know that.
Well, I was just gonna say, I could see that term with social media too.
Yeah,
I don't think
definitely.
It's just social media apnea as well.
Right. Yeah. And, just when we're breathing shallowly or doing shallow breathing, that's a signal to our nervous system that we're in danger. Because when we're calm and relaxed, we can breathe deeply. When we're scared or we're running, we're breathing very shallowly. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if we're even if nothing's happening, but we're practicing shallow breathing, we're sending the message to our nervous system that we're not okay, that something's wrong. So that right there increases people's anxiety. And we already know anxiety is off the charts completely, right. For folks. So when it comes to IFS, in that process that I do with clients, an IFS therapist, we get to that point when we're working with the younger part of the client, and we facilitate what we call an unburdening. And in that, the client invites the younger one to identify what he or she has been holding in their body for all these years, fears, beliefs, anything like that. And we invite them to release them into the elements, so they can burn them in a fire, toss them into the air, bury them in the ground, wash them away with water, or send them into the light. And so they facilitate that with their little ones. And then we also invite them to take back in what may have been pushed out through those experiences, things like confidence and calm, safety, things like that. So I kept thinking and noticing, like, my clients, when they're in this meditation, working with their young parts within, sure, the young part within in their imagination is releasing from their body. But I kept saying, oh, like, we need to release the energy from our bodies. And we know that things get stored in our cells. So it was my hope, and my plan was to help people when they have done this unburdening process, and sometimes I'll invite people, like, shake it out as you're doing it. Do it with your younger self, shake it out of your hands or blow it or whatever you want to do. But if that isn't something they're comfortable with, that's where I will invite them to follow it up with a breathwork session. And that's where they can have either a group session where there are other people, but generally right now they're all done on Zoom. So everybody's on a screen, they're all in their own homes. So it's not like anybody's watching anybody else. And I take them through an hour-long meditation with visualizations, and I can use the general language, meeting with your parts, where I don't have to speak to one individual's process. And so everybody gets to go within, and they get to meet with these younger parts, and they get to actually breathe through active breathing, where they are stirring things up in their body, changing the pH balance in their body, saturating their body with oxygen, doing breath holds, and it's just all fascinating, that whole part. So that's where I connect it with IFS. But a lot of people who come for breath work haven't done any IFS work, and that's the beauty of it. It can stand alone as beneficial to anyone. Yeah,
I think it's fascinating, just the physical effect that you spoke of on it as well, because I think, when people think about breath work or meditation, we're thinking, oh, okay, it's lowering your stress level, it's kind of clearing your mind, it's allowing you to be more present. But taking it a step further, like you mentioned, in terms of there's an actual physiological effect in terms of the pH balance. Like, I don't think many people realize that.
Yep. No. And when this kind of breath work, like when I talk about active breathing, there's all different breath work patterns, different patterns of breathing, which some people learn them through yoga, although what we do is different, but some of the patterns, that people would be familiar with, I'm sure they've learned about in yoga classes and meditation classes. But this, for the active breathing part that we do, the most common of the breath patterns is what we call a triactive breath pattern. Some people call it a euphoric breathing, where it's a 3-part breath. The first part goes into the belly, and it's all done through the mouth. The second breath goes into the chest, and then an exhale, and it's all done through the mouth. So it's like and we do that over and over and over. We have music on in the background. Some people will move their bodies as they're doing this breathing. Some lay fairly still. It's so powerful, so powerful. And, we're using the whole system, where that first breath that goes into the belly, a lot of people, I have to work with them first just to teach them how to, send the breath down. And we do that. I used to do it with my little kids when I did children's choir, lay on the floor and put, with them, I used to say, a stuffed animal on your belly. With adults, a lot of times they put a book, and you take in a deep breath and you try to get the whatever's on your belly to rise, and then you breathe out and it goes back down. And so even just working with that for that first part of the breath, to go into the belly, can be tricky for some people. And I've had people do breath work and they just say, this is hard. And it's like, well, if you haven't breathed, fully and actively, yes, it is hard. People who do cardio exercise and stuff, they don't find the actual breathing difficult. It's more the like just the process that is fascinating for them, to really do the visualizations and the release from the body, and now we do a body scan, like just notice where you have tension, where you have tightness, that can be a part poking you, saying, see me, feel me, hear me, I'm right here, and where do your parts poke you? With a lot of us, it's the low back or it's the shoulder, it's in the neck. And it's like, listen to your body. We all know the body whispers, then it talks, and then it screams. So it's like, let's listen to it and give it what it needs. We're giving it the breath. We're giving it that oxygen. We're also giving it our attention. And that is what we just don't do. We don't do it.
Yeah, well, honestly, we weren't taught to do it. That's the thing, right? It's like we weren't taught to listen to our bodies. And as you're talking about the breath work, the only reason I know how to breathe from my abdomen and not like everybody breathes from up here is because I played an instrument in school.
Exactly.
And so I think if you played an instrument or if you were in choir, yes, then they do teach you have to breathe from your abdominal, not your chest, because of the, amount of breath that it takes to, play an instrument essentially, or, sing.
Right.
And, but I would never have known that. I would have been breathing up here, I think, if I didn't, if I wasn't, musically trained.
Right.
Or even with something like dance or whatnot, sometimes we're taught, but honestly, like, beyond that, we're not taught to listen to our body. We're, I can't think of anything. And I have a PhD in exercise physiology. We weren't even taught that then, like in grad school, they're not even telling you, okay, like do this body scan, listen to your body. What's hurting or what are you noticing? Just, think about it. 'Cause everybody is like up here all the time.
Right.
And
it's interesting. When I do my online classes, sometimes I will have people, like I'll do a dance song first just to get everybody moving. And they don't, they can do whatever. They can stay seated. They can just use their arms. It's just to get the heart rate up and then to lay still so that they feel their body after it has moved. Feel your heartbeat, like just know what that feels like. And for a lot of people, they never do that either, so, and the funny thing is when I do that, I'll tell people, if you're not comfortable being on camera, while we're doing the dance part, you can step to the side, but we're all here just to have fun. Now I can't step to the side because I'm the one leading it. So I'm just dancing away. But most people step to the side. Like they don't want to be seen. We're not comfortable in our bodies, especially women. I hate to say it, but it's so true, so that's why I'm looking more forward to doing more workshops and stuff in person so that I can help people to get over even that fear of being seen. Moving to music is so powerful. But if we're shy, it's like we've got the T-Rex arms, like we're not letting them go. And it's like, I really want to work with people in doing more of that too.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's amazing. I mean, it's just, it's just awesome, the work that you're doing, and to help people just become more comfortable and relaxed and like let that go. Who cares? I have a great story for you. When we come back, we're going to take another short break. My contact information is www.drdianehayden.com. This is the Dr. Diane Show, and we will be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. I am talking with Charleen Miele. She is a licensed professional counselor and certified trauma-informed breathwork facilitator. And you can learn more about her at www.thesacredselfllc.com. Before we broke, we were talking about just how people are, especially women, just really so self-conscious, I think is the word I'm looking for, about, kind of just dancing and being out there and, just, not being comfortable in their body, I guess. And it triggered this story that I remember of a friend of mine who, I bet this is going back 10 or 12 years. So this is how long this, and I'm going to call this a trauma, how long this has affected her. But she was out one night with her boyfriend and she was in a bar and they were dancing, and she's probably, well, back then, let's say she was probably in her early 40s. And she's cute. She's adorable little thing. She's an awesome dancer. But for whatever reason, they're out in this club and she was dancing, and she turned around and she saw these young girls and they were kind of like pointing at her and laughing. To this day, she has not danced again.
Mm.
I know, awful,
Wow.
right?
Awful.
And it actually has kind of progressed into this such of an anxiety that she isn't even comfortable if other people are dancing around her.
Mm.
Like she starts to feel like we're causing a scene, or we're going to get thrown out of a place, or I don't even know like what's going on in her head. But it recently, it got to the point where she actually had to leave this place that we were at because she was having a panic attack.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to send her to you.
I was going to say, send her to an IFS therapist for sure.
Yes.
Happy to help.
Yeah.
Yeah. And things like that happen. And I remember too, like even when I was teaching and the young high school girls that would, I remember one student so vividly, and she was struggling. She had some disordered eating, big time body images. And it all started when she was in 6th grade. When I was teaching her, she was a sophomore. And a young boy, another 6th grade boy, she was walking up the stairs at school, and he said, "Wow, you have big thighs." And that was it. That moment, a kid she didn't even really know made one comment and her spiral happened. Yeah. And, we don't know, like in the case of your friend, when people are pointing or laughing, we assume they're talking about us.
Oh, they may not
even know
been.
that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what I used to tell people too when they'd walk down the hall and, "Oh, so and so was laughing while she was at her locker when I walked by." I said, she could have been on the phone with someone. She could have heard a joke. She could have but we assume we're wired for safety and survival. So our parts they're always watching, and they will, if anything goes wrong, they make it about us so that we are prepared or we can deal with it. It's part of our survival mechanism, but we got to really work with that.
Yeah, we always think it's about us, and it usually is never about us.
Right, exactly. But our nervous system doesn't know that. So the brain has to tell the nervous system and work with the body to release whatever it's holding on to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, speaking of all the amazing things that you do at the Sacred Self, which is located in Newington, Connecticut, tell me what's new and exciting. What have you got going on there?
Yeah. So I'm still seeing clients for therapy. Obviously, that's still the bulk of my work. Although I have to say there's such a need out there that I don't have a lot of availability. I keep trying to graduate people. Like, contrary to popular belief, therapists our goal is not to keep clients for life. Our goal is to help them and send them out of the nest, So I'm trying to move people so that I can fit in some more daytime clients. The breathwork stuff that I do in the evenings. So the second Monday of every month, I run a group session online. And I just started on the third Wednesday of each month, I'm doing an advanced breather class. The advanced breather class is going to just be more of the active breathing with increased length breath holds. So like when we do the active breathing and we're saturating our body with oxygen, we can hold our breath for longer. And so working with some fun things like that, just to kind of strengthen our body a little bit. So that's going to be the Wednesday class that I'll be offering. And Funeral Home has contacted me several times to start a bereavement group, and I have put it off just because I was getting wrapped up in the details, but we're really hoping that's going to launch by the end of the spring, that we can get that off the ground. So that's something that I'm excited, looking forward to to doing that. And then as far as my, on Friday mornings, starting in April, my 3 morning sessions, 10, 11, 12, are going to be walk and talk sessions. So people who want to have their therapy, I can't do like the deep IFS work while we're walking, obviously, because they can't close their eyes and all that. But sometimes people just need to process things. And again, some people have a very difficult time just sitting still. I have clients that come to my office and they walk around my office during therapy, or they, one of the rooms that I have, they need to move. And so walk and talk allows people to, if they're having like anxious energy, while we're processing it, we can walk. And so they can do that. So I'm starting that in April. On Friday mornings, 10, 11, 12 will be my walk and talk sessions. And they have to start and end from the office. If people are using insurance, that's just a rule that they have. But people who are self-pay, I'm going to hopefully, I can meet them at the Reservoir in West Hartford, or, places like that. So that'll be fun. I'm really looking forward to that.
And that's for people who are local to Connecticut. And the other,
Yes.
like you're saying, you do a lot of stuff virtually as well.
Yes. There's still a desire. As far as my clients go, I'm about 50-50 with in-person and telehealth, but we're increasing on the in-person, and that is my goal. There's an element that I feel like I lose when it's online. I really like to be in person with people. So but I honor, what people want. And a lot of people that started with me during the pandemic, they're in Connecticut because I'm licensed in Connecticut. So they're in Connecticut, but they're far, they can be an hour away. So I don't expect that they're going to come in weekly to the office.
Right. And you're doing the breath work virtually too, though. The
breath work is virtual. I can do, I have 2 people coming in to do a session together into my office, because I do have a space for that. And I'm actually speaking to a couple of different places that have bigger areas that I'm considering renting occasionally for like a workshop, so that I can have like 10 to 15 people coming in to do breath work in person. What you lose when you do breath work online is I can't do like sometimes when people are breathing, they want you to hold their feet for more of a grounding, or touch their head. Almost, I'm Reiki certified as well. I don't really intermingle those, but it's a lot of it is like they like to feel the energy of the person facilitating. If they hands on the solar plexus, or again on the feet, on the head, and you miss that when you're not in person. So looking forward to more of that as the year goes on.
Yeah, well, I think that just this education for people about everything that we talked about today, for people about breath work and how important that is, and just us learning more about how to reconnect to our body is what people need to be educated about and learn about, for sure.
Right. Yeah. And I think my biggest underlying message for everybody is helping people to know that they matter, that they matter enough to pay attention to their body, that they matter as much as the other, whoever the other might be in their life. We have a lot of people who are caretakers, who just empty themselves out completely, and they don't feel like they matter. So yeah. That's just such an important piece for me, is to help people recognize you matter as much as anyone else.
I agree. Well, I want to thank you so much, Charleen. This has been awesome.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show. Please join me the first and third Thursdays at 11 Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Have a great week, and I will see you back here next time.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show, revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul, with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Tune in every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com. Center your thoughts on what you want and shut the door on every suggestion of fear, worry, or lack from your own consciousness or the consciousness around you. Once you master that, everything is possible. To learn more about me, Dr. Diane, and receive a free digital subscription of my magazine, visit naturalnutmeg.com.